Hello YouTube, Goddard Radio Moscow here again with another beer review for you, as is usual. For this one we are going to continue on with a series of Scottish beer reviews that I've been doing for you for the last 3 weeks, and this is review number 23 in that series. And for this one we are going to return to Brewdog in Aberdeenshire, very near to where I used to study. In fact, these guys are based in Ellon and I was studying in the city of Aberdeen. So we're going to do a beer that was one of the original core range beers, if I remember rightly, and this is the Rip Tide, which they describe as a twisted, merciless stout. So as is usual then with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a very brief history of the brewery. It will be quite short because I've done maybe about 40 or so Brewdog beers for you already. The link to those is in the video description below, so check them out if you are interested, as is the brewery website, and also check that out. But if you don't want to stick with me for the brief history of this brewery, then just fast forward a few minutes into the video and you will get straight to the tasting. So anyway, Brewdog were founded back in 2007 by James Watt and Martin Dickey, and their first brewery was at the Keswick Industrial Estate in the very northeast corner of Scotland, a little town called Fraserburgh. But in 2012, I believe it was, they moved to their new purpose-built facility in Ellon in Aberdeenshire. Now these guys are a very cool brewery. In fact, they're very influenced by the sort of American craft brewing renaissance, if you like, and they do actually attribute a lot of their recipes to that, and they do listen to their fans as well, which is very cool. On Twitter, every year there's always the mash tag beer, and then you can vote for a main style, a sub style, a malt base, a hop base, a twist that they put in it as well, and they also let you vote on the artwork as well. So they're a totally kind of fan orientated brewery, and you can actually buy shares in these guys as well, which is the other very cool thing. They run the Equity for Punks shareholding program, and essentially you can buy into the brewery and you'll get you can exchange it essentially for some for like discount in the shop, in the pub, and all of this sort of thing. So very cool, and the level of discount you get kind of reflects how much you actually invested in the brewery, which is obviously very cool. So another thing this brewery are very famous for is actually having held the title of World's Strongest Beer, and they held it on 3 occasions. They had the Tactical Nuclear Penguin, the Sink the Bismarck, and then the End of History, and they were in trouble with that one because they packaged it in squirrels and stoats, and they got in trouble from the animal rights people, and they were also branded as very irresponsible as well by the Scottish media because of their Tokyo beer, which is an 18% imperial stout, and that's one of their core range beers in fact. And they do always have a small core range of beers that's supplemented by a whole host of different experimental ones. In fact, that's the really only kind of downside with Brewdog. They produce a hell of a lot of good beers, and they've got quite a few different series of beer reviews that come back every year, and but that's the only downside, is a lot of this beer is only produced once, so you might find a Brewdog beer that you really do love, like something crazy, but most of the time you will only get to see it once. But on the odd occasion they do bring it back. I think there was quite a demand for this one to come back, and the other demand I've heard was the 77 lager. They do their fake lager now, but the 77 was a hell of a lot better in my opinion. But anyway, that's your sort of brief history of the Brewdog brewery. The other thing I should actually mention is that they've got a whole host of brew pubs around the country now. This started off in 2009, I believe it was, with Aberdeen. They expanded to Edinburgh and Glasgow in Scotland the other few years, and pretty much every single major city in England has one now. There's 2 of them in Sweden, Gothenburg in Stockholm, Firenze in Italy, also Roppongi in Tokyo in Japan, and also Sao Paulo in Brazil, and there are new sites planned for that, and they're opening up a bottle shop as well. That opened up in Camden in London recently, and they're looking to open up their next one in Aberdeen, in their home city. So that's your sort of brief history of the brewery, if you like. We'll get on to the tasting of this beer now. I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the artwork on the bottle. It's the very typical kind of Brewdog artwork, this one. So you've got the nice kind of, it's almost like a background that's had white paint splattered on it. I really like it, but they've changed their labels recently. They're keeping the Brewdog crest, thankfully, which is the kind of staple of the Brewdog brand in my opinion. But this is a really nice one, as you can see, Rip Tide. This one incidentally doesn't have the blog on it. Some of their bottles that they export don't have the little blurb on them that they like to put on them, and it's one of the standard Brewdog caps. This is the white one with the red dog on it, but I think each of their beers do have an individual cap now. They're making them all, but this brewery has really grown a hell of a lot, which allows them to do that. They're pretty much the biggest independently owned craft brewery in Scotland these days. But I do have the blurb that's from the website here. Let me just bring that up and I'll read it out to you. It says this is a strong, silky smooth imperial stout with a deep, dark ruby appearance. Mocha, bitter chocolate, licorice and dark cherry flavours prevail before the balanced, warming and encapsulating finish. A contemporary Scottish take on an age-old Russian classic style originally brewed for the Tsars. Our interpretation brings together hops from both sides of the Atlantic, amazing flavoured malts and dark sugars. Like the original Brewdog, this beer would never bite you, but would rather give you a lick on the face. Look out. So that's the kind of blurb on this one. So let's get it open and get on with the tasting. It is an 8% imperial stout. I'll just read out the malt base on this one. It's malted with Maris Otter, dark chocolate, caramel, chocolate malt and also roast barley, and it's hopped with First Gold and Galena, and it has a twist of muscovado sugar apparently. So let's get this guy out then and we'll get on to the tasting here. Quite excited to try this one. I don't think I ever tried this one back in the early days. So as you can see, a nice kind of semi-smoky opening there, and we'll just get this guy out and into the glass. This is one that I actually picked up from the Brewdog bar in Aberdeen. Usually my supplier of all things Brewdog is Lewis Patterson at Thistle News in Aberdeen, and I believe he's actually supplied by Brewdog as well. So if you ever find yourself in Aberdeen, go and check out his little shop on Holborn Street. A very, very nice guy, and they've got a nice selection of kind of Danish craft beer. A lot of kind of random American ones they're getting in these days as well, and they also get most of the Brewdog stuff in too. So go and check them out. Their Facebook page is in the video description for you below. So I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the colour of this beer. As you can see, it's poured a pretty much very dark rosewoody colour, this one. If I hold it up to the light, it does have just a tiny little bit of a ruby tinge to it, not very much at all, and there's about a half finger of a very, very frothy kind of beige tan head on this one, which is what you would expect from a stout. Very, very attractive looking beer. There's quite a bit of little bubbles in the carbonation kind of going up towards the bottom of the head, which is quite cool. It should be quite a smooth one though, with it being a stout. But let's take a look at the aroma. As you would expect, it pretty much has all the kind of typical things that you would expect from a stout aroma, if you like. It's got a nice little bit of roasted coffee, a bit of dark bread actually. I'm picking up a little bit of the kind of almost Estonian rye bread that you would get over there. You're just picking up a little bit of this nice rye bready character in it, I think. Some burnt sugars, that's probably the muscovado. The muscovado actually has a very kind of roasted caramel aroma to it actually. There's maybe some kind of dark treacle in there. It's got one of the darker roasted coffee malts that I've smelt before. And there is a nice bit of earthy character from the hops. You can pick up just a little faint bit of that kind of dark fruit in this one as well, but it's quite a sweet roasted aroma you're getting from this one mainly. You can smell that muscovado sugar. It's got a very nice almost kind of roasted marshmallow smell to it, you know, like s'mores you would call them in America. It almost has that a little bit of that aroma to it, kind of burnt sugar. But it's a very, very attractive smelling beer, so let's get it tasted. One of the original core range from Brewdog, the Rip Tide Imperial Stout. Cheers. 8%, I forgot to say that, I think. That is a beautiful, beautiful beer. That's just on first taste. You can really taste that muscovado sugar coming out. This is one of the sweetest stouts that I've had actually, and it's a caramel sweetness that it has. And I think that's the only one I can think of that's had quite a caramel sweetness to it. But yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. You're actually getting, it's got a very kind of sweet roasted caramel flavour to it, but then that gives way and blends in a hell of a lot with this kind of nice sweet fruity character that you're getting. Yeah, I would stick with that. You've got a really, really nice sweet caramel flavour in this one, and it just gives way to these dark fruits. It's absolutely beautiful. Very, very well done in terms of the flavour. Yeah, it's very, very sweet, and the sweet fruits just kind of linger in this little oily bubble on the very front of the tongue there. This is outstanding. This is probably the best stout I've tasted actually. And I can't remember how many of them I've actually reviewed for you on my channel, but this one is something else. This is a beautiful, beautiful beer. But yeah, you do have some kind of underlying dark bready flavours. As I said, that kind of rye bread thing. And I think that's typical in Baltic porters. I tried a few of the kind of local ones in Estonia, and they did have that kind of typical sort of rye bready taste to them, but it's a lot of nice kind of sweet burnt sugar that's coming up front there, and that nice, it's got a little bit of an oily and kind of silky mouthfeel up front that brings out the very nice kind of sweet fruits there, but underneath you've got a lot of nice sweet kind of milky chocolate malts. It's really, really beautiful. There is a little bit of earthy character that comes out, particularly in the aftertaste, and that's where you're getting a lot of the kind of roast coffee element to this one as well. The roast coffee isn't going towards the edges of the tongue though, it's sitting right in the middle of this one, which is quite unusual within this style as far as I remember. But this is a beautiful, beautiful stout, this one. And I mean, you can drink this. I would always recommend with this that you drink it as your first one. You don't want to have other ones kind of soiling your palate a little bit for this, you would say. Take this as your first beer. This would be great with like vanilla ice cream or something like that. It truly is outstanding. This is one of the best Brewdog beers that I've reviewed for you. I mean, Brewdog are often complimented on their very strong beers like the Tokyo and their sort of 14% kind of things that they do. But this is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful beer. I mean, if you ever get the chance to try this, you know, I would think you'd be silly not to, in my opinion. This is one of the best beers that they've done. I can't see why they would drop this from the core range, because if I remember rightly, they don't actually have a stout in the core range, and this, when they can produce a beer like this, it really should be a core range member, because it's outstanding, it really is. So as I say, a really nice kind of fruity, sweet roasted caramel coming out on the beginning. Underneath that you've got a little bit of rye bread character in there, and the sweet kind of chocolatey malt, just a little bit of roasted coffee, but that kind of gradually builds up more in towards the aftertaste of the flavour. There's not a lot of dry character from this one, although into the aftertaste you get just a little bit of dry character on the edges of the tongue there. It's a truly outstanding beer. The fruity character in this one, I would say, is kind of your typical sort of figs, raisins, plums kind of thing. It's more juicy than sharp, so I would say it's maybe more the kind of figgy flavours that are coming out. It's not quite a sharp one, it's almost as if it's a little bit of a candied one, but it's a bit sharper than some of the other ones I've had, if that makes sense. It is more of a nice juicy kind of fruity feel that you have on the opening of this one. And as I say, it's quite unusual not to have a bit more dry character because of the kind of bitter coffee malts and the earthy hops as well. So in terms of the mouthfeel of this one, definitely mid-bodied. It's a bit lighter than you'd kind of expect for the stout style, if you like, but it's done very, very well, and I think having it a bit more mid-bodied than full-bodied really helps you to bring out the kind of juicy character from in the fruits as well. It's a little, as I say, a little bit lighter than you'd expect for a stout, but the carbonation is very, very soft. It's got a nice kind of creamy mouthfeel, but at the same time it has an oily element to it as well. But there's a little bit of dry character, as I say, just from the coffee, but overall the mouthfeel is a very, very juicy one. And overall, like I say, it's a beautiful, beautiful beer. One of the best stouts I've tasted, in fact. And it's a real shame that they took this out of the core range, because I do think it's kind of it is one of the more deserving members that deserves to be there. I mean, Jackhammer and this one really should be in the core range. Dogma is obviously there, which is a beautiful beer, and this one and Jackhammer I think really deserve to be in the core range as well. So maybe Brewdog will see my review and hopefully they'll agree with me on that, because you know, I've reviewed 40 Brewdog beers for you, and this is one of the ones. This, I would say, is up there with the best ones that I've reviewed from them, and I've reviewed a hell of a lot of good beer from them. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. Definitely check out the Rip Tide if you get the chance, and pretty much anything you'll try from Brewdog, you will enjoy, I'm sure. I've only found 2 beers from Brewdog out of hundreds or something like that now. Out of about 50, 60, 70 beers or something like that, I've only found 2 that I didn't particularly like, but this is one of the truly outstanding ones. So check this one out if you do get the chance. Please comment in the section below and let me know your own thoughts on this beer if you do happen to have tried it. A truly wonderful beer, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I hope you're enjoying this series of Scottish beer reviews that I've been doing for you, and I will catch you soon with the next one in the series. Cheers.